The most useful tool in pooled or collaborative data analysis is the spreadsheet. And we're going to start off with just a basic understanding of the spreadsheet as a number cruncher. And so, for example, this problem here is to try to calculate the net energy change in the burning of methane, CH4. So CH4, when it's burned, goes to carbon dioxide and water. And in the process there, we have to break 4 carbon-hydrogen bonds. So to see how much that is going to cost us, we could put change the number here to 4. And that's going to cost us a total of 1,652 kilojoules. And then 2 oxygens. We can see the 2 oxygen double bonds are broken, so we simply change the number 2 there. And then, but at the same time, we're forming 2 carbon-oxygen double bonds. So we look for carbon-oxygen double bonds. We see that there's a total of 2 right there. And then we're also forming 2 water molecules. Well, a water molecule is H2O, so that's going to have 2 oxygen-hydrogen double bonds, single bonds, but there's 2 of them, so we're going to put down there 4 hydrogen-oxygen bonds. So looking over here, looking for the 4 hydrogen-oxygen bonds. And so we can see in this case that there's it's a loss of energy, which means that it's going to be an exothermic reaction, which of course we all know when we burn methane we get heat. Natural gas, when it burns, produces heat. That's what we use in our stoves. So how do we get these numbers? Well, the spreadsheet has calculations built behind every cell. So this one right here, if we're trying to figure out the total energy change, that was simply derived by subtracting L5, this one right here with the red dotted line, from L3, the one with the green. And you may notice again the color correspondence when you're trying to do some kind of a calculation. Well, if we say, well, where does the total energy out come from? That was simply taken by looking at cell I28. So we look over I28. Oh, that just happens to be right here. So let's see what I28 is. I28 is the sum of I7 to I26. So basically, that if I were to highlight this, you can see that that dotted line surrounds that, which is where we get that calculation. Again, we're going to come back to this a little bit later on to practice, but the idea is that spreadsheets are number crunchers, but they can also graphically represent data. So here's data of atmospheric ozone in Los Angeles, both in the beach, up in the mountains, and the valley. And how does this vary over time? Well, we can also look at seeing high-low graphs, which is coming from this data, or area graphs, which is coming from that data, or bar graphs, or column graphs. Spreadsheets allow us to graphically represent information, and that allows us to make interpretations and make inferences and so forth about what's going on. So the question is, when we're working with a collaborative resource like Google Spreadsheets, how does it work? And this diagram will be very helpful. This diagram is also found in static form on the HPCA, HP Catalyst website. So when you go into Google Drive, which is of course the collaborative spreadsheet we're working with, you can create a form or a spreadsheet directly. Now, we're going to use the example here of creating forms. When you say create a form, you go into the edit form option. Now this is different from the live form, which is what the user is going to see. So you have a form called the edit form, and when you post it, the people taking this are going to see it in live form. And when they press the submit button, it's going to be automatically added to the spreadsheet. And it's going to go into rows and columns, which will be titled according to the questions and to the author. Now, if you were to click on the form button, which you'll see at the top of your spreadsheet, you can either see the summary of response, which will be a graph of that data, or you can be taken back. If you just select the option to see your live form, you can see how the form actually looks to the user, or you can give another option to go back and edit the form as well. And so it's important to realize that the edit form, the live form, the spreadsheet, and the summary responses are all different manifestations of the same resource. We call it a spreadsheet, but it has different aspects. So the reason you want to do a form is if you want users to enter things with nice question and answer format and have that data dropped into a spreadsheet. So to create a form, you would go into your drive.google.com and click on the Create button and simply select a form. Now notice that the form is green and the spreadsheet is green, and that's by design because the form is going to dump data into the spreadsheet. So we're going to look at a specific form here. This is a form which is associated with a hurricane activity, which we discuss elsewhere here. And this, we notice that we can title this and we can put in information, questions, and so forth like this. Let's just see how this type of a form was created. So when you create a form, the first thing it's going to give you is a title, which is blank, and also the add item, which is blank. So when you add an item, you have lots of different options. You can see that we've chosen in this particular example to include images, and that's going to be very helpful if you're going to be asking students questions about a photograph. Maybe it's about a laboratory setup or the results of an experiment. But you have these other options here. The most basic or the most frequently used ones are the text, which just is a short text entry like a name. Paragraph, which is just a larger box that they can either copy and paste data into, or they can just type in its entirety right there. Multiple choice, where they select one out of a list, or checkboxes where they can choose many on a list. Choose from a list simply gives you options to pick from. So let's just let's just go through these. So if we select just the text, okay, I'll just type in there name, and then of course you can, with all of these, you can specify, with instructions. And this will not be in your spreadsheet. This will. So this is going to be your category header in the spreadsheet. This is simply just helpful information that you could use for the students or users to be able to know what's going on. So if we click on Done, then we've created a cell there, which is fairly small, but it will go nicely into a spreadsheet. Now, a paragraph text would be something that will allow greater entry. You notice that there's a little larger box here, but you can go way beyond that. So if I was to say something like write an essay about hurricanes, then this would be something for perhaps a paragraph entry. All right, a third type here would be multiple choice. And let's say that I want my title to be occurrence, and maybe I want to ask them questions like, where do hurricanes frequently occur? And we want them to have a couple different options. And so let's say I put up here, let's say the Northeast Pacific, or let's say the Western Atlantic, or let's say here the Arctic Ocean. And so now when they do this, the user is going to be constrained with one of those three responses. And the nice thing about constraining the response is that makes it very easy for data analysis. So when the data comes in, that data you can see here, if I click on the form and go right here to show summary responses, that when those summary responses come in, you can see that they're going to be constrained by the entries and allow them to go in directly into pie charts or other types of graphs that are consistent with the data. So the advantage of using constraining questions, in other words, questions where you have to select from a list, is that you can do a quick analysis. You can't do an analysis of an essay or an analysis of a name, but you can do an analysis here of multiple choice questions. So again, multiple choice, checkboxes, choose from list are ones that will give you ability to plot data and analyze it. So let's say I have check, using a checkbox right here. And you notice we want our question titles to be brief because they're going to be column headers or category headers in our spreadsheet. So let's just say that we ask a question here. In this case here is that, let's say, characteristics. Well, that's not very helpful. So again, with your help text, you can say which of these characteristics were found in the hurricane you viewed or studied. And now there's going to be different options that they could put on them. So for example, we could put in here counterclockwise spin. Let's say that high winds, that's pretty obvious, etc. But the idea here is that let's say they wanted to choose more than one option. Here when they're selecting, they can choose like maybe two of this, and that will is going to be a type of question where there's going to be multiple potential responses to the same question. All right, choose from a list is where you generally want to have save some space on the essay and just have kind of a pop-down menu occurring. And so where do we see something like that occurring? In this essay, we don't. These are all, well, actually we do right up here in terms of what month did they occur. So when the user opens this up, they're going to see, oh yeah, all the various different months appear, and they just simply choose from the list. You don't really want to take up your whole spreadsheet or your whole form with all of those data entries options. And so now you can see that when you're creating a form or a questionnaire or a survey, or whatever you want to call it, you simply have to click on this add item and then configure it the way that you want to. So let's say you chose a question that is essential for people to answer. Let's say, rate this tutorial. And you said, you know what, the whole point of this is that you want to get a rating out of it. You could just make that a required question, and then they're not going to be able to submit it until that question was placed. So these are all forms, kind of issues you can deal with forms, and the forms pump that data again into, well, actually it's represented in the live form, which looks like this. Again, this is going to be the form where you edit. This is going to be the live form over here. So again, looking back at our original documentation here, we've been working in the edit form where we're developing the actual survey or questionnaire or data entry, and then the live form is what the user is going to see. Now, where does that data go? Well, that data goes into a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet just is basically a series of rows and columns where anything in a particular column is answers to a specific question. So here is, when did these famous hurricanes occur? And they were constrained by months, as you saw just previously. So this data, again, if we click on the form tool up here, we can say, where did that come from? Well, you've already seen the edit form, and you've seen the live form. Well, one thing we haven't shown here is the summary responses. And the summary responses associated with that spreadsheet would be graphed, as you can see here. And once again, these answers can be graphed because the options are constrained, just like we just showed you there, like the month of occurrence. Since we constrained them to 12 options, it's easy to plot, and it's very clear to see that September is the most frequent hurricane month, at least for hurricanes in North America. And so that this hopefully gives you an overview of how spreadsheets work. Again, you make them in Google Drive. You can create them if you want the students to be able to have a live form where they're going to enter the data rather than entering data directly into the spreadsheet. You can just start with an edit form, and when you put that into your web page, in other words, when you insert either link to that form or when you embed that form into your web page, they will see the live form. The data from that live form is automatically added to the spreadsheet over here, and that will automatically generate a summary of responses, which is the analytical tool that you see right there. And when users are looking at this, they can then retreat back to the original editing form, or they can go back over here to the live form.